Hello, I'm Dr. Harper. This video is in project management. It's a lecture video on Wysocki comparison. You've probably had a chance to read the chapter, and in the chapter it's pretty much a summary of the course, and so you've had a week to do that. And so the second week, and now with the lecture, is just reviewing a lot of what he talked about, and it goes into detail a little bit more into the models. So let's bring up an overview of the lecture. Here are the lecture notes, and I start with a pretty much summary. He has the project landscape here with traditional projects and agile projects, extreme projects, and emergency projects. And here he calls this the project landscape, quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then over here he has the traditional and complex different part of the quadrants. With the linear, there are two models, standard waterfall and rapid development. An incremental, he has stage delivery and feature-driven development model. And then down here, he listed out and actually talked about the details on how if we went about doing it, what would be the details of what you need to think about. So this is not necessarily a lecture or a text as much as it was a manual on here's what you need to think about when you start doing these things. And he talks a little bit about each one of these. And then he has the adaptive for the maximalist type agile type project, and then the inspire type model. But in the middle, he talks about the hybrid project management framework, the HPM framework, and it's a very simple model. But here he tries to emphasize that when you work this feedback loop here, once you have your ideation phase, the feedback loop here, here's where you go back and forth between different models. And so being knowledgeable of the models when they're used, what the characteristics are, and being attuned to your project, and when you move back and forth, that's pretty much what he's talking about in this chapter. And then when you're working on it, the details is what he's talking about. So if we look at a little bit more in the details, if you remember to review, and he pretty much reviews he's assuming you already know the book, the other chapters, and he pretty much reviews a little bit. And here's the different types of PMLC models: traditional, agile, and extreme. And here you have the linear, incremental, and iterative adaptive as far as the models are concerned, the general models, model characteristics. And traditional is pretty much straight. You go from, it's just straight. You don't look back. You keep going, and there's different versions of that. With the incremental and the different models. And the agile, then it's also the same direction, but there's a feedback loop. Now this feedback loop, he calls it iterations or cycles. In iterations are where you have minor changes, as cycles are major changes. But the idea is you're coming back in the plan. This is the solution. So you keep improving the solution, and you see those characteristics in agile projects, where one up here you're just getting it done, and deliverables is your characteristic. Here you're learning about the solution to develop your deliverables. And then you have the extreme, where the feedback loop again, but it goes all the way back to the scope, because the extreme is that not only is the solution unknown, but the goal is unknown back here. And so this feedback loop may be changing your goal, changing your solution, and as you perform the solution, you begin to learn, oh, there's a better goal, or a better change the scope a little bit, or even change the goal. Okay, and then the comparisons. And so he goes through each of these comparisons again, which I think is fine, which is good. The nature is a fixed methodology, which implies compliant characteristic. Your change conforms to the plan, because the plan is king. The plan is followed in traditional. Once you have that plan, you don't really alter the plan. You focus on getting the plan done. And complexity and uncertainty is addressed in the plan, and the plan is very focused. You focus on the plan. One-way communication just to get it done. The client really is involved at the end to validate the deliverables. Yes, they are achieved. The triple constraint is the success drivers as we go through, because you're focusing on the actual project itself. The team members can be independent. Therefore, they do not have to be co-located. They can be distributed. And finally, the team members usually are specialists. At least you'll look for specialists. Why? Because they don't have to work with anyone. They can just do their job and get it done as efficiently as possible. Contrasting traditional with agile, agile has the nature of change management. For example, the characteristic is more coordination because you're changing the solution. Change is managed in the plan, so you keep changing it in the plan. That is, the complexity and uncertainty is designed and managed in the solutions. And finally, it's very team focused. Because agile, depending on which model you're using, agile is very team focused and people are working together. Therefore, you have two-way communication and also you have collaborative involvement of the client. So as you improve the solution for agile, you collaborate the client to make sure that you're moving in the right direction. It's value added. And the success drivers of value is not only for the project, but also for project management. You learn better how to achieve these kinds of projects because you're learning from the solution. The team is dependent on one another because they work together, and usually the team members are generalists. They can be specialists, but they don't have to be. They have to work with each other on a lot of different things. Finally, the extreme is a very flexible culture because you don't know the goal or the solution. So therefore, the characteristic is creativity. You're being very creative, trying different things, which is very different than the coordination. You're being creative. And understanding that is key in the extreme type projects. The change is the plan. So you cannot be afraid of change or even failure. The complexity and uncertainty is encountered in not only the solution, as we did in Agile, but the goals and the solutions. So we have uncertainty even in our goals. So the approach is stakeholder focused. So you engage the stakeholder continuously. You have multiple communication channels. The client has leadership roles, not just collaboration, but leadership roles. And you focus on the business value. So here it's not just the project. It's not just the project as far as the value added to the project in project management. This is the value to the business unit or the organizational unit. And finally, the team is collaborative, and the team members are facilitators. They facilitate, and the facilitation goes right into creativity. The generalist coordinated to achieve your solution, but in extreme, the facilitators facilitate creativity for the goals and the solutions. So these are three very different types of projects. But then this is probably the most important table. What are the characteristics? What are the strengths? What are the strengths, the weaknesses, and when do you use them? This is what probably the most important thing to keep in mind in doing the hybrid project management framework. First of all, traditional, the well-defined goals and solution, the repetitive activities, few expected changes. When do you use it? Simple projects, short time of completion, single deliverable, repeatable projects, control of your resources, available templates. This is something you've done over and over again. You have to do it, just get it done. But the Agile, on the other hand, the goal is well defined, but the solution is not. And because the solution is not well defined, that changes the project, really. You have a flexible approach where change is expected. You have skilled team members or generalists rather than specialists, and co-location of team members are recommended. Now up here, they do not have to be co-located. They don't have to be co-located with traditional, but it's highly recommended with Agile because they have to work together. When do you use it? Well, complex projects. Your goals are important. They have to be met. You know what they are, but the solution is not well defined. So you're discovering a solution to achieve these goals. Incomplete definition of deliverables and unique learning and discovery needs. Now the learning and discovery needs here is in the solution. So the learning and discovery is not only learning and discovery of the project or solution, but also project management for doing it the next time. And finally, the extreme, the goal and solution are not well defined. And when the goal is not well defined, again, that changes the project. It changes how you approach the project. You have high uncertainty and complexity. You need a strong creativity in your team. And that creativity is unique to the extreme type projects. And high client involvement, because they become more of a leadership role, not just a collaborative role. When do you use them? Undefined projects. Significant long-term benefits are desired, and also significant benefits are desired. In other words, it's an important project because they are long-term benefits because you're not really sure what you're going to come up with. Research and development is a good area where this can be used. It also illustrates when it should be used. And also, sometimes with extreme projects, you may not come up with a solution, or your solution may not be that good. And that's why you have a feedback loop. You might even move on it and then realize that you go back to the goal, and you may not even get good solutions on these kinds of projects. Okay, but that is the goal, to try to come up with a solution and a goal. Okay, then he goes into the iterative agile projects, and they go through the different models: prototyping, evolutionary development waterfall, rational unified process, the dynamic systems development model, adaptive software, and Scrum. And a lot of these in here, a lot of these are software development, and they come out of software development, because software, if you're developing the software, you don't know what the software is. And so you have a new solution, a new application, or an upgrade. And so you have to discover the actual code, because you're not really sure what the code's going to look like. Okay, this is for the partially defined, and so therefore these types of models are very good for partially defined or minimalist type agile projects, because you pretty much know what that software is going to do. You don't know how to do it. Or you're adding features, or you're adding versions, and you're adding slight modifications. So it's not really significant changes. Now, the significant changes is in the adaptive. But then he goes through each one of these. So the prototyping, he emphasizes something called a production prototype. What I think is very interesting, they're all different kind of prototypes. He emphasizes the production prototype. Now, the production prototype is a working version, and a lot of these have working versions of your solution. But you have different types of prototype. Like an iconic prototype is a working version of not your solution, but something that is related to yours, like a quasi prototype. But it's an iconic to where, yeah, if this works, that should work, but it's not direct. And so even though the iconic prototype works, you still have to modify it for production. And then you have a simulated prototype, and the simulated prototype has to do with you take a simulation and it works on a simulated basis, but it's not actually the production. So it's similar to it, but it's not precisely exactly what the production prototype really should be. So you try to simulate different aspects to it, but then he says your prototyping in project management, because it's agile, is even you can have iconic and simulated, but basically don't waste your time, too much time on this. Go right to the production prototype, because in this type of agile environment, the production prototype can move very quickly. And then you have other types of models. You have the evolutionary development waterfall model. Well, this is similar to the standard waterfall model, and it's a minimalist model, as we said before, but it engages the client by providing a production-ready version of the solution with each iteration, or each cycle, or iteration. It works well when only a small part of the solution has not been clearly defined. So you have the solution, but not all of it, and so you just need a little bit more. So the evolutionary waterfall is you have the waterfall aspect, but you have the feedback to say, no, let's just improve this part here. And so the evolutionary development waterfall is essentially it's an evolutionary waterfall. And so the feedback is just moving very quickly to your solution. Now, the Rational Unified Process, the RUP, is used for software development. Software engineering process for building a solution in an iterative fashion adapts well with document-heavy process approaches. And so when you have software development that requires a lot of documentation, then the Rational Unified Process has the actual building blocks and steps and iterations to make sure the document process is honored and also done correctly. Now, the types of software development that requires a lot of heavy documentation, a lot of it is commercial, that there's going to be versions, there's going to be updates. Commercial software code where the code's going to be updated. You're going to add more versions to it. And so the Rational Unified Process says make sure everything is known before you move forward. And a lot of R&D, back when I was doing R&D, a lot of R&D will have this type of unique aspect to it. Make sure you document it because they're going to change it. Because in research and development, you're coming up with a great idea, but that great idea will generate and spawn many more other ideas. And they'll go back to that code and says, modify that for this. And so you have to know where to modify it. Especially in the other area type of software is when the software becomes very large. You're doing a lot of things, a lot of different modules, okay, a lot of subroutines or modules. And when you have a lot of them and you fit them together, make sure you document that well to make sure it goes, you can take one out and move another one in. You know how to do that. Okay, the next is the dynamic systems development model. Yeah, again, it's like the standard waterfall model, but with feedback loops that contain 9 key principles. So whereas these two are similar in that they're both similar to the waterfall model, but the Rational Unified Process really has iteration steps that are well defined. This one has 9 principles that are well defined. And so this is like the waterfall model with the feedback loops, where the feedback loops, much like the evolutionary development waterfall model, the solution is less well defined. And so the 9 key principles is how you start moving toward a better defined solution. So this is a little bit more away from the minimalist to where it's still standard waterfall, but the feedback loops have significant changes then. The adaptive software development contained 3 phases, and this is just another model containing 5 lifecycle phases. Another model that works well with some industries. I'm not familiar with this particular software development model, but it's another structured model that software developers can use. And finally, Scrum. Scrum is very popular. Scrum is used in situations where, actually it says here, defines a chaotic development environment. Okay, it's co-located teams. And Scrum is when you really don't know too much about it at all, or you have to get it done quickly, or you have a lot of people with a lot of ideas, where you're going to have very frequent Scrum sessions. And the Scrum sessions are customer driven. What does the customer want? How do we do it? What does the customer want? How do we do it? And it's a very active, co-located type of chaotic type environment where you're coming up with solutions very quickly and just do it. And sometimes these Scrum sessions are a few days. After a few days, maybe a week. Every Friday we have a Scrum session, and that Scrum session is going to say, what do we do? Did it work? Where are we? What are we going to do next? Let's continue on. No, let's scrap it. Let's go all over. So you do have a lot of Scrum, a lot of changes. Okay. Well, these are models that are all very popular within the minimalist model. Okay, they're all pretty much designed around that. But then it goes into the maximalist, which is the adaptive. But then he also talks about the extreme project management model. And in this extreme model, he goes through the inspire. Now, remember the inspire, you don't know what the goal is. And so I'll know it when I see it. You explore ideas. What I mean by explore the teams is you get ideas from different people, different teams, different approaches, you create different charters, and you just throw a lot of things out there. And the general multiple object overview statement, in other words, what you're doing is creating, and this is plural, POSs, project overview statements, many of them. You really don't know what's going to work, but you identify a lot of different possibilities. The next stage is to speculate. I wonder if this would work. And here you take this back to the conditions of satisfaction, like validating. Is this what they really want? And also feasibility. Can we do this? Is this what they want? Can we do it? Is this what? Can we do it? Produce a list of rejected and accepted POS for launching. Okay, and then you go to incubate, and the best way, and you don't stay here too long. You decide, the whole purpose of this is ranking. And once you have your ranking, and then you start doing it. Don't stay too long on analyzing this too long. Move to the incubation stage. You say, let's do it. The best way to find out if it's going to work is try to do it and see if it works, because you'll learn a lot more by doing it than thinking about it. So you establish a plan and produce deliverables. And that's key for learning. You maintain collaboration, flexibility, creativity. That's still there. Why? Because as you start doing it, and he doesn't say do it. He says incubate, which I love. It's a great term. You're doing it just to see if it's going to work. You don't do it blindly. It's not a waterfall model. You're doing it to see if it's going to work and see if you come up with a better idea. And then after you've done this for a while, then the next stage is review. Where are we? Evaluate each phase and the status of the project. Decide to proceed with more phases or close the project. Is this good enough? We couldn't do it. Fine, let's go back to the initiate stage with the POSs, and maybe we reorder them. Okay. Down here, we select one, and then we launch it again, or incubate it again. And so this step here, this idea is for extreme, but it's also can be used even with the adaptive agile, where you know what the solution is, but the solution is really ill-defined. Okay. And then he has the framework where all this goes. Again, he reviews it again. And the framework is your ideation phase, where your project team, in your project team, you have your client manager, your project development team manager. This is from your projects. And so the client is engaged with a stakeholder. The development team manager is involved with the actual project team. And so that's part of the ideation phase. The setup, the client manager is more of a decision maker, and it looks at the project delivery focus. Is this what we want? The development manager is advisory role and feasibility focus. Can we do it? And so these two here, these two perspectives, is this what we want? Can we do it? They have to go hand in hand, because if you say this is what we want but we can't do it, then that's no good. We can do it, but it's not what we want. That's no good. Both have to be there. And then finally, he talks about different swim lanes on how to do this, which is very interesting. It's obvious he obviously has done this before. He gets down into the weeds. He says, okay, you have probative swim lanes and integrative swim lanes. The integrative is adding detail to the solution, implementation focus, and that's the development manager's role. Advisory, feasibility, implementing it, can we do it? He'll take the lead on that. The probative swim lanes is correcting direction of the solution, problem-solving focus, and the client manager will take a lead on that. But both of these have to work together. Here's details on implementation. Here's the problem-solving approach. Both of the implementation and problem-solving has to be focused on the project deliverable and satisfying the decision stakeholder. Okay, so this type of hybrid approach, this framework, it's robust, and he emphasizes that, and this is the final, at the end, the conclusion, the epilogue here. It's robust because it applies to all the PMLC models, even the linear. It's dynamic because it's responding to the solution, responding to the goal, and also responding to environmental changes. It's responding to changes of problems and changes and improvements within how you're doing it, what you're doing in the environment. And the environment could be either the business environment, the industrial environment, or even the societal environment, like a pandemic. And so it's a way to be very flexible and very dynamic. It's effective. It enhanced business value and enhances quality. Why? Because you're not just looking at the project, you're focusing, the business value is focusing on the client manager and also looking at the goals. Enhancing quality so that the development manager makes sure that it's done correctly. Okay, so you have both of these. And finally, it's efficient. You wouldn't know this unless you did it, and Wysocki has done it. And he says he has noticed that even instead of the linear models, this framework, you decrease the time. It's much faster, and it's cheaper because you're focusing on just what needs to be done. And also, you're doing it faster. And so you're focusing on success. So this right here is a characteristic and value and benefit of the hybrid project management framework. Okay, and then he goes, and then down here I just list the complex project management for the agile iterative and the agile adaptive, to where this is more of the maximalist agile and this is minimalist. So all of these techniques here, all these models apply to the minimalist. And he talked about the adaptive project, which is like a beginning of the hybrid. And then finally the extreme. Okay, well, this is really the final summing together of this textbook with this hybrid framework. And everything he has a framework within which you can work, and he has details on how to implement it. So this has been just a summary of this textbook, actually of the course, and the Wysocki part. I think it's a very practical, it's valuable, very beneficial, and a lot of details. And a lot of what he does is personal experience. And so also he talks a little bit more like a manual than an actual textbook. And so you wouldn't really use some of these things unless you're involved in those kind of projects. So that's all I have for this lecture. And these are all the lectures. The rest of this course is going to be the project and the exams. So hopefully this week, this will help you start focusing and going into and thinking about the projects. So that's all I have for now. Between now and the next time I see you, I want to urge everyone, take care.